Hello world, my name is Tim Ruswick and welcome back to another game dev video. Today I want to talk about why your game should be sufficiently frustrating. It sounds like one of those things that's counterintuitive. It sounds like one of those things like, why would I want my game to be frustrating? But it's important, and I'm going to tell you why. Well, first off, a game is not a piece of software. So if you think about the difference between software and games technically are software, right? They're code that creates an executable that does a thing, but the goal of a game is different than the goal of a piece of software. The goal of a piece of software is to make a task easier, right? Faster, cheaper, whatever. The goal of a game is to provide an experience. And sometimes experience requires extra steps, whereas you wouldn't want that in a piece of software, right? If you think Dropbox, for example, Dropbox is a fantastic example. I've used Dropbox every day for years, as long as I can remember. It's one of the few services that I will probably buy forever, even with plenty of alternatives on the market these days. They made the process of syncing files between computers seamless. They just said, hey, forget what all these other people are doing. Forget the Drive and these other companies where you had to upload files and then boom, or you had to like commit stuff via command line, or you had to do whatever. No, they just said, hey, here's a magical folder that appears on all your computers, and everything you put in it is on all your computers automatically. They took steps out. They made my life easier. They made my life better. They made everything happen faster. And as a result, it's so much better. And they've got additional stuff, like they keep every version of every file, so you can always go back and find stuff. But it's super valuable, right? Whereas a game, they don't just let you go to the final boss. They put all this stuff in between, right? They add all these steps. You got to be this many levels, and you got to do this, and you got to get the sword of whatever, the flame sword to like do this thing, and then you need the ice sword to do this other thing or whatever. They add all these steps in it, but those steps are important because the experience is what matters, right? The act of acquiring that sword is a journey in and of itself, and the act of using that sword then to, kill the final boss or whatever, that's an experience, and that helps with that stuff. So how does that relate to sufficiently frustrating? Well, controls themselves need to have some sort of barrier, right? Like the ultimate version of software is stuff that just automates everything. Like Dropbox, I don't really interact with it at all. I don't do anything to it. Just automatically saves all my stuff to the cloud automatically, and then just on, like, they took the whole process of uploading and backing up and all that stuff away from me. They just eliminated it because that was frustrating when I just wanted to get things done. But that frustration, it turns out, is an important role. It plays an important role in the experience, in any kind of learning or any kind of growth, right? You need some frustration to grow and learn and become better at anything. So games can't just be super easy all the time. And I'm speaking generally, but let me just clarify that there are games that are designed to be super easy, super random. And there are games that are designed to be way too hard and way too frustrating, right? There are these, and there are markets for both of those. But I'm saying in this wide open middle area of general game design, and again, any rule can be broken by game designers. We're artists, we create things, so break any rule you see fit to make art. But I'm just talking in general from my experience. Sufficiently frustrating is really, really important. And this came up on an episode of Designer Notes that I was listening to, and I thought about it, and I covered this in the past, but it really made me think back to like how even simple things like controls, how difficult it is to pull off a move directly correlates to how much and how often people perform that move, right? And other things matter too, like how good it feels, how the sound effect is, what the visual effects are like, and the actual in-game effect, whether it's strong, whether it's weak, and all that stuff. But the direct number of clicks, even if you just want to have a quantifiable number, the direct number of clicks between you and a thing is a direct incentive or decentive, if that's a word, dissent of, sure, let's go with that. Two, how often they use that thing, right? And so whether you put something in a menu or not, whether your controls are super responsive or not, directly coincide with the experience of the game. If you look at a game like Celeste, right? Celeste is a very fast-paced, very on-point precision game, or even Phytophobia. To use an example closer to home, not comparing my game to Celeste, but you know. So these games require no input lag. They require very little barrier between the controls and the user, right? They're very precision-based games. But if you take a game like N+, or any momentum, N++, I think it is, any momentum-based game or something like that, the way that you control is not just about the controller. It's about your momentum. It's about the things that you've done in the past. It's not about this split second of reaction, right? It's not about the split second you press the jump button. It's about this split second plus the past 3 seconds of momentum and fall and physics and all that stuff, right? And it can create some moments. You don't have direct precision control over all the characters when you have momentum, when you have these things in your system, right? But it adds to the experience of what the developer is trying to create. And so that control has to be there to incentivize other things, right? Like if you make turning while jumping in the air very difficult, if you make your jumps weighty and have momentum to them, right? It directly disincentivizes, if that's a word, players to run and jump and be precise with their jumps. It encourages a little more thought on the front end of where they're going to jump, right? You've got to put a lot more thought and strategy into how you move and how you jump, given a momentum-based system. So what some players could consider frustration is actually part of the design, and whether it's intentional or not, it incentivizes certain things. It incentivizes certain behaviors from the player. The other option is like how things are presented. If they're presented as a reward at the end of a level or something like that, I see it one way. Whereas if they're presented in the world and they do nothing really special about them, I can see them a different way, right? The act of acquiring items or how difficult it is to pick things up, like do your things auto-collect? Do I have to go up to it and hold X? Do I have to, like, how do I interact with it, right? And I don't think the answer is always to make it easier. I don't think it should be as easy as it possibly can, because easy as it possibly can actually removes some of the experience. It should be designed in a way where it makes sense thematically, right? So and also in a way that directly correlates to how often, but also how big of a deal this specific thing is, right? How rare does this happen? How much does this change the game? And so on and so forth. So if we take a weapon, for example, if you can imagine like just an RPG where you're just killing a bunch of enemies and they're dropping a bunch of weapons and you're just auto collecting everything, right? And then at the end of the game, you just go through all your loot and see what you got and then equip stuff or whatever. That's one way. But what if like you're just killing all these enemies and then all of a sudden there's this big guy and it takes forever to take him down and finally he drops like one little sword and you go up to it and you have to hold X or you have to hold E or whatever to capture it, and there's a little like loading bar progress to like lifting it up, and then there's a big sound effect like brrr, sword acquired or something, right? Those are both valid ways to approach equipment or items, right? But what they tell the player in the way that they work is very different. You could classify these two things as one is easy and one is as sometimes frustrating, because it's slower and it takes longer, it takes more controls, it takes more it takes more of everything, right? And some players will hate that. But it directly correlates to how good something should feel. It directly correlates to how big of a deal it is. It correlates to how players most of the time feel about it. And so you need some of that frustration. You need some of that, I guess, gravity or width, I don't even know, like fullness of experience. Fullness of experience has to include some frustration here and there, or it's not a fullness of experience, it's a flatness of experience. I'm making up terms here on the fly. But so it's just something to think about, right? It's just something to think about, like, what do you want to incentivize? What do you want the player to feel? What do you want the player to do? Does this option need to be here? If so, how big of a deal is it, right? And then that should determine how it feels. But I don't think, and this is coming from a dude trying to take some of the complexity out of a casual game or out of a strategy game currently. I'm trying to make a casual version of a hardcore strategy game, so I'm trying to meet somewhere in the middle. And what I realize is the first thing I did is I stripped all complexity away, and then it was just too simple and too easy, right? Then I just got dudes moving and attacking, and that's just not interesting. And so I need some of those moments of frustration. I need some of those moments of missing an attack. I need some of those moments of these various things to add to the experience of what you get for what I'm trying to deliver, right? So that's all I got for you. If you want to wishlist my game, Battleborn Tactics, you can do so down below. But I want to say thank you to these people right here. They help me keep doing what I'm doing on YouTube's. If you want your name on this list, you can head over to patreon.com/GameDevUnderground. But in general, just keep in mind that not all frustration is bad. We generally talk about frustration like it's always a bad thing, but sometimes the act of frustration helps the learning, and it helps the growth, and it helps the experience, right? When it might not normally be there, it can take away some of that fullness of experience. So that's all I got for you. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Tim Ruswick, and I'll see you later.